Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Skåne here in the south of Sweden, and we're going to return to a brewery who originally started out brewing their beers in Copenhagen. It's only more recently that they've moved over to this side of the Öresund actually, but I've had some very nice beers from these guys in the past, and I think that this one will be pretty interesting actually. So for this review then we are going to go down to Malmö and we're having a look at another beer from Rocket Brewing Company. So this one is called the Koji. It's an Imperial Stout coming in at 10.2% ABV, and this one is brewed with the same bacteria, if you like, that is used in miso and soy sauce. So it should be really quite interesting. And this beer, I think it's quite funny for me for a number of reasons. So my beer dealer over in Japan, his name is Koji. Koji at liquor shop Asahiya Taishibashi Maichi in Osaka. And the really funny thing about that is his name is Koji, and the shop that he has, it's actually in his grandfather's old soy sauce factory. So I'm wondering if that's why he was named Koji, after the bacteria that was put in. Because if I remember right, it's also Koji is also the name given to basically the yeast, the bacteria that is used in sake production as well. But with his family, I think it's a tradition to name their children after certain things, because his daughter, who also helps him out in the shop, is called Rika, as in liquor. The Japanese word for liquor is a Rika. So yeah, it's quite an interesting thing that. So I'll definitely need to get a bottle of this beer to take over to Japan with me and give to Koji. I think he'd really quite like that. I'll need to make sure that I order another one through Systembolaget. But I thought this was really funny when I came across this beer, and I just got this one actually because it was Rocket Brewing. I didn't realise that it was I got it because it was Rocket and it was an Imperial Stout, and I thought this would be a very interesting one, and it was only when I got it later that I realised that there was this whole connection to soy sauce and things. So I think this one will be very, very interesting, as I said. But this is also a collaboration with Syrtanten Syrade, which is basically they're a jam company in the Malmö area, and their stuff is supposed to be pretty nice as well. So I will need to get some of that to take over to Japan. When I get out there, hopefully in June. We'll need to see about that, but I'll need to take some of that over to Japan with me at some point soon. But yeah, very much looking forward to trying this one. A 10.2% soy sauce, I guess you could say soy sauce type Imperial Stout, this one. So yeah, really curious to see what this beer has in store for us. So yeah, let's see how we get on with it then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Rocket Brewing before. No doubt there will be some more at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've tried for you before. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Rocket Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Rocket Brewing Company, as I've told you before, are a Danish-Swedish brewery that were originally specialists in Brettanomyces beers, sour beers basically, but they've since expanded into different styles. They do still produce some sour beers, but mainly actually most of their production now is kind of regular things like IPAs, Imperial Stouts and stuff like this. So the company was originally founded back in 2014 by 5 people, and the 3 full-time partners were Kim Agersten and Thomas Schun, who were the brewers, and also Ulrik Lerskov Schmidt, who was dealing with the admin side of the brewery, and they were joined by 2 other partners. This was Martin Moström, who dealt with the design side of things, and Martin Hogild, who was dealing with the concepts, and they were both dealing with the brewery's marketing and social media and things like this as well. So Kim had previously been the chef at the Melke and Hurrikal restaurant in Copenhagen, and they began brewing beer quite intensively there. But Kim participated in Mikkeller's tasting panel, and it was there that he met Thomas Schoen, and they did a test brew on the big scale together, and that really kind of prompted them to be a bit more serious about their company, if you like. And since all of the owners liked sci-fi, they decided to name the brewery Rocket Brewing Company. But unlike many other Copenhagen brewers, they actually had their own brewery, which was found in the small town of Haslev. And this brewery was in an old abattoir with a 260 metre floor space, and they had a 500 litre brewing system in there. And they said that they were basically the world's biggest home brewery at this stage. But as of May 2015, they had a total fermentation capacity of 13,000 litres in this brewery. Later though, they decided that they would move to Sweden, and I think that was in 2017 that they made the move over to Sweden. But they established themselves in Malmö, and they released their first Swedish brewed beers through Systembolaget in late 2018, and there's since been a change in the structure of the ownership. So the current owners of the company are Kim Agersten, who is the main brewer. There's Joel Carlson, who is also a brewer, and he takes part with the sales and PR kind of things as well. There's Aaron Holborg, who designs the labels. There's Carl Anderson, who does the sales and the finance, and there's also Richard Zetterberg as well, who's also involved in the sales and distribution side of things. And at the moment they're looking to expand their capacity because the beers have sold pretty well actually, and they have established themselves really well over here in Sweden actually. So yeah, long may it continue. I do wonder what the motivation behind moving to Sweden over Denmark was, because I would have thought that it was a bit easier. You know, I would have thought that it would be a bit easier to stay in Denmark where you've got the free market, but I guess if they're over here in Sweden, they've got access to, you know, 10 million customers, and it is easy enough to export to Denmark from here as well. So, you know, it's an interesting business decision that. I'll need to ask them about that when I go down and actually meet them. But like I said, a very nice brewery, this one. I've had some really nice beers from these guys in the past, and they're definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. I've reviewed, this must be review number 5 or maybe 6 that I've had from Rocket Brewing so far, but I think this one might well be the most quirky of the beers that we're going to have. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Rocket Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to see more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'm very, very curious to see how this one turns out. So as you can see, it's got this lovely typical Rocket artwork on it there. You can see he actually does look quite Japanese. The dude there, the spaceman, is out picking his miso beans, because yeah, basically soy sauce and things. It is a kind of fermented bean sort of thing from what I gather. It's usually like, yeah, soybeans, fermented soybeans that we use to make soy sauce. It's beautiful. I absolutely love soy sauce. It says on the back here, the famous microbe whisperer Anti-Sour, or Syrtanten in her own language, has helped us to forage the mold spore called Aspergillus oryzae. This is an ancient ingredient used on planet Earth to bring forward the mythical 5th taste. When we got the assignment from the Faceless Force to find this super mold, we knew exactly who to contact. When it comes to fungus and germs, Anti-Sour is there for it to be trusted for sure. So obviously, yeah, Syrtanten, this is the Sour Anti, the Sour Anti Jam Factory. I think that's quite nice actually. But yeah, really nicely presented this one. Cool to see them collaborating with another local Malmö company. And yeah, without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. I need to remember to put the Syrtanten website in the video description below. But yeah, without further ado, we'll get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Adding soy sauce into beers, it's actually very popular with certain breweries in Japan. Like a lot of the smaller breweries do it, the kind of more well-known craft breweries. Well, I suppose Mino Beer do it, and they're quite big and well known. I'm trying to think if like Shiga Kogen and the other ones that I've encountered have done that. Obviously, if you're watching the channel, you will know, if you've watched it regularly, you will know that I have family connections to Japan and things, so something I can always look into. The Japanese craft beer scene is always very, very interesting. So yeah, pardon me. So yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, this one's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I shine the light through this one, it really is pitch black. That you're not going to get much blacker than that. Black as night. You can see there's a solid half finger of a frothy kind of kind of, this is a very rich tan coloured head that's on this one. It's very almost, it's almost like a chocolate tan head or something like that. That's very, very impressive. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there, but overall it does look pretty nice and pretty much what you would expect from an Imperial Stout, to be honest with you. I really like how this one comes across. So you can see there's a good bit of lacing to this one, and that will be the soy sauce, the sort of Koji influence there. Koji gives you a very a really nice kind of thick thing. So yeah, it looks very nice, pretty much what you would expect in terms of appearance from an Imperial Stout. So let's have a little look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Oddly enough, I don't find this one, it doesn't smell too much of soy sauce. You can smell it a bit, granted you can smell it a bit, but I thought it was going to be like really, really prominent. But I suppose if it was a Japanese brewery, it would be very, very prominent because they love that type of flavour. They love that sort of, I don't know if you can call it umami, is that umami? But they love that sort of, they love that kind of type of flavour. So, but I guess if they're introducing this into the Swedish market, people maybe are not so familiar with how strong it can actually be. But yeah, it smells really nice. I mean, for me, with this beer, you can really smell, there's a lot of chocolate in this for me. The malt base really smells as if you have a sort of toasted, like, if you think about the kind of aroma you get from the chocolate powder for Nesquik or something like that, you really get that kind of that kind of powdery chocolate note out of this. It almost smells big and oily and well fired, like a high cocoa chocolate, like a sort of 80% cocoa chocolate in there as well. Yeah, I really like how that goes together actually, the really nice high cocoa chocolate in there, and it almost smells like that has that toasted powdery kind of quality to it. You can definitely smell a little bit of the roasty black malt in there, but I suspect from the aroma it will likely be carafa that's in there, because there is that element of that kind of bread crusty type note to it, and it gives you that smooth, almost German brown rye bread type quality. That's really nice with this one. There is a wee bit of brown sugar in there as well, like a sort of sweeter caramel, but also at the same time a little bit thicker and treacly. And you can get that. It's interesting because the chocolate and the brown sugars, you can really smell that sort of miso-y, soy saucy type aroma mixing in with that. As I said, it's nowhere near as prominent as I thought it was going to be. It comes across as more of a sort of subtlety, and I do suspect that's probably the thing they've had with this beer, is they wanted it to be there and to be noticeable, but not to dominate the beer. So I suspect that it will be treated as kind of a subtlety. Either that, or it just doesn't come out in the aroma all that much. And you can get that with beer sometimes, in fairness. The more that I smell of it as well, the more I start to get a little bit of a milky chocolate note out of this. So maybe there's a wee hint of a, like a vanilla, oaky, woody type thing to this beer. There's definitely some woody undertones in there, a little bit of nuttiness as well. But yeah, the more and more that I smell of this beer, I start to get a little bit of a, I start to get a wee bit of nuttiness out of it, which is interesting. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make about this beer. I like how this goes together. Yeah, the malty side of this beer is very, very nice. On the hoppy side of things, it's got a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of grassiness. I don't think too much to report there. The green side of the beer really leans towards the grassy side of things. There's a little bit of a red fruity character as well. You've got a little bit of a, yeah, you have got a little bit of a kind of figgy kind of note out of this beer. A little bit of a, yeah, just a little bit of a kind of candied red fruit, to be honest with you. A little bit figgy, maybe one or two kind of blackcurranty notes out of it, but not too much to report in terms of the fruity side of things with this beer either. So take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of this one. It actually is not too obvious that this is like a, a Koji infused Imperial Stout. It strikes me as just a kind of straight up Imperial Stout rather than anything else. So take a little bit of time to appreciate that before you taste the beer. But let's have a go with this one now and see how we get on. This one is the Koji Imperial Stout from Rocket Brewing Company in Malmö, brewed in collaboration with Syrtanten Syrade from Malmö as well. A lovely little jam company. A 10.2% Imperial Stout with the same bacteria, if you like, that's used in miso and soy sauce. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, kampai. That's interesting. That it's actually quite a bit more. This beer's quite roasty and toasty, compared to what I thought it would be. So yeah, to me, this first impression of this Imperial Stout is that it leans towards the roasty toasty end of the spectrum. But yeah, on second sip, once your mouth adjusts to it, you start to, you almost start to just kind of appreciate the complexity of the flavour in this a little bit more. But yeah, it definitely, you do get a lot of dryness out of this beer in the middle of the palate, actually, because that's one of the things I would think you have to watch with, is that if you're brewing a beer like this, you can't let the roasty toasty flavours dominate. To be honest with you, it has to be kind of smoothing out a little bit. So you have to be careful if you're brewing a miso. If you're brewing one of these beers with the soy sauces and things, as a stout, it has to lean towards that smooth end of the spectrum. I've got a feeling with this that maybe the roasty toasty malts kind of dominate just a little bit too much. But you can taste that sort of salty, that kind of salty umami type flavour in this beer. You really can get that towards the front of the palate. So yeah, this one, it has what it says. It does have that kind of Koji flavour in there, but it's the roast, as I say, the roasty toasty black malts are fighting it all the way to dominate the flavour. That's one of the things. So what I would maybe say to Rocket is, if they're going to do this beer again, just take the black malt back a little bit, or the carafe or whatever it is they've used, just take the roasty bitterness just back a little bit in this, and because it sort of does. This beer, in a way, there's nothing wrong with this, and this is a good beer, but to me it just strikes me as if you've got the roasty black malts fighting with this kind of salty umami type flavour from the Koji in this. That's the thing about it. It does almost just come across as like a little bit confused in a way. It's like, what direction am I going in? But that's it is a good quality beer. Make no mistake about that. You will get a good Imperial Stout from Rocket. I just think it's a little touch too roasty to allow the sort of soy sauce flavours to come out. And as I say, it might open up a little bit more as the mouth adjusts to it, because I mean, in the beginning, when you take the beer in, this is one of these stouts where it really dries out on the palate the further you go into the flavour, into the aftertaste rather, and it really, really does. But in the beginning, on the front part of the palate, that's where you really get the sort of salty-ish, umami, soy saucy type quality out of this beer, which is interesting. I really like how this one goes together. This is one of these beers, I can feel it growing on me already, but as I say, I think the roastiness, the black malt content of the recipe of this, just needs taken back a little bit, because it's just almost a little bit too dry in that sense. Because you get the flavour in the beginning and it does linger there, but I'm not sure it matches so well with the roastiness. And it's just my knowledge of sort of Japanese food and things like that. You maybe do want just a slightly sweeter malt base to match the Koji here. But that's a minor criticism. The thing is that this is still a good beer. It's an inventive beer, and Rocket, I think, do deserve a good bit of credit for that with this. This is a really interesting one in my mind. I do wonder what inspired them to actually use that kind of bacteria in this, but it works. It really does work well, and as I say, this beer, it grows more and more on me the more that I drink of it. But yeah, let's try and break down the flavour of this one then, and describe it a little bit more. So straight away with this beer, you can feel that nice roasty, toasty black malt quality. That blankets the middle of your tongue, and you can feel towards the back of the palate it really pushes its way out a little bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if it's carafa in this, because it does have a little bit of that dry, well-fired, bread crusty type quality to it. And again, at the back of the palate, it really is very, very dark. And as you come further forward, you can feel it does get a little bit more bready in the centre of the palate. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of brown bready quality in there. On top of that, you start to get some of the chocolate, that high percentage cocoa, you know, the 80–90% cocoa chocolate. It does have a little bit of that, you know, almost burnt chocolate powder type thing off it. And then on top of that, you start to get a little bit of a kind of treacly molasses sort of thing. But that comes out a little bit more into the aftertaste. So you do have a little bit of that powdery chocolate, the sweet kind of brown sugar, and then the roasty black malts towards the back of the palate. Then as you move further forward on the palate, that's where you start to get the kind of salty, soy saucy, umami type flavours out of this one from the Koji. It's an interesting transition that it makes here, and you can feel underneath that that kind of salty flavour that I'm talking about, it is a little bit more kind of brown bready, almost like a kind of brown rye type bread quality there. But if you go to the front corners of the palate and move in a little bit, you can feel there are some sort of woody undertones to this beer as well, which is interesting. Yeah, definitely a few kind of woody undertones. I don't really get any nuttiness out of this one, but as I say, I find with this one the roasty dark malts, they push their way out more and more the further you go into the aftertaste with this one. I do like how this goes together. As I say, my one kind of criticism of the beer is that it is a little bit roasty for the umami, for the sort of Koji flavours in my opinion. So it could benefit with just being either a little bit smoother or a little bit sweeter in the malt base actually. But they have pulled off a really quite interesting beer with this one. So thumbs up to Rocket Brewing for being inventive and thinking to do something with this, tweak it a little bit, and I think they really are onto a winner with this one, and they've already made a very solid start with it in my mind. And I do remember that Rocket actually, when it comes to their Imperial Stouts, they do tend to lean towards that roasty, toasty, bitter end of the spectrum actually. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you have got a good little bit of earthiness there. As you come further forward along the side of the palate, that smoothens out. You get a wee touch of floral quality on the front corners of the tongue, then round the front curve of the palate it's just that little bit lighter and more grassy. If we're guessing what hops are in here, I wouldn't be surprised if there's an English hop in this, because the earthiness is pretty strong, but there are some American hops that can match that actually. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of Bramling's Cross or maybe even Fugels in this one actually, because that would match the bitterness quite well. There is just something about the roasty black malts and the earthiness and stuff you get out of the Rocket Stouts. It does just have a little bit of an old English Imperial Stout quality to it. In terms of the fruity side of things then, as I always say, you get that little oily bubble behind the front curve of the palate where the juicy fruity esters come out. So yeah, when you take this one in, it does have a wee bit, when you take it in you get a little bit of an almost plummy sharpness to it, but then very quickly it just sort of disappears, and it just becomes very light and figgy, and the further you go into the aftertaste you might get a few kind of blackcurranty figgy esters out of this, but the fruity side of this beer is almost negligible, and the roastiness really spreads far forward on this one. Like as always, I always divided the palate into thirds. You get the back third of the palate, which is always more bitey and roasty, the middle part which is quite sweet and caramelly and things like that, then the front part which is where you get the fruity end of the beer, and then you've got that little border region there, and you can feel the roastiness really spreads forward into that little border region between the sweet maltiness and the juicy fruitiness. You can feel that roasty blackness just kind of pushing its way forward in this one as well. So yeah, this is a very, very roasty beer, and I think in some ways it doesn't quite suit the Koji for me. I think it just needs to be a little bit smoother and almost slightly sweeter to bring out the flavour as it is. But you do get that flavour when you've got the liquid on the tongue. You really do get that kind of salty, savoury type quality that you'd expect from it. But yeah, a really interesting beer, this one, and as I say, thumbs up to Rocket for being inventive with this. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I'd say that this is, you know, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation, you do notice a little bit of that in this. There is almost a little bit of crispness to it. I find this beer, it really tastes actually quite wet and quite clean for an Imperial Stout, which is quite interesting. This one to me does feel a little bit lighter than some of the other Imperial Stouts that I've come across. In terms of the bitterness of this beer, I think this one is quite heavy. I think it's about 80 IBUs, both from the malt and a little bit from the hops. I do suspect there's Fugels and Kent Goldings or something like that. And this one, I don't think there's Bramlin's Cross. It's not fruity enough to be Bramlin's Cross. I think there's Fugels, potentially Kent Goldings in there to match up with the black malt, and I think there probably is a bit of Carafa in this one as well, if I'm guessing. But yeah, there is quite a bit of a big roasty bitterness to this beer. You do get a little bit of sweetness from the malt base, but it really does dry out. A little bit of saltiness almost, a little bit of that savoury umami thing in the centre of the palate as well, and there's a wee touch of a kind of juicy fruitiness to this beer as well. So overall, this is quite a dry stout. You will notice that this one gets progressively drier as you go further and further into the flavour of it. But overall, as I say, it's a very, very interesting beer. I would like to see them re-release this one just with a slightly smoother or sweeter malt base, just to match the umami a little bit more. But this is the thing, Rocket Brewing, their stouts have always leaned towards that roasty toasty end of the spectrum, so that's obviously just what they've gone with for this kind of first go at this beer. But I really would recommend them to just, you know, smoothen it out a little bit if they're going to continue with this beer, because I think that would just suit the you know, that would just suit the Koji a little bit more actually. So yeah, a really interesting beer, this one. I always enjoy reviewing the beers from Rocket Brewing. These guys are a very nice company, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one that these guys release. I definitely need to remember to take a bottle of this out to Koji at Liquor Shop Asahiya in Taishibashi, Maichi, Osaka. I'll need to take a picture of this, of me giving him this beer or something like that, and then send it to the guys at Rocket. That would be awesome. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Koji, a 10.2% Imperial Stout with Japanese Koji bacteria, which is used for soy sauce and miso soup from Japan. A collaboration with Syrtanten Syrade, a little jam company down in Malmö, but brewed at Rocking Brewing Company. Originally from Copenhagen in Denmark, but now based in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. A very interesting beer, this one, and as I say, always nice to review different things from Rocket. Thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Rocket Brewing Company as well. We will return to these guys at some point soon, but this one in the meantime was a very, very interesting beer. The Koji Imperial Stout at 10.2% ABV, brewed with Syrtanten Syrade, a little company, a little jam company in Malmö, and a very interesting beer that they've produced, I have to say. Slàinte, skål. Make sure you check out Rocket Brewing Company, Syrtanten, and go and read a little bit about the Koji bacteria as well. Slàinte, skål, cheers.